Not every car that rolls off the assembly line is a masterpiece. Some are so poorly conceived, awkwardly designed, or useless in real-world conditions that they become legendary for all the wrong reasons. These are 9 of the dumbest cars of all time. Oddball machines so baffling you've probably never even seen them. And for good reason.
Dear viewer, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for your support.
Number 9. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, Subaru was still a niche player in the American car market. While Detroit was pushing oversized cars and Japan's big players were leaning into economy sedans, Subaru took a different route with the Brat, short for Bi-Drive Recreational All-Terrain Transporter. It was weird, small, and unapologetically different. But most importantly, it was a loophole machine, a workaround on 4 wheels. The Subaru Brat was introduced in 1978 as a direct response to the growing demand for small trucks in the U.S. However, imported pickup trucks were slapped with a 25% chicken tax, a tariff dating back to a 1960s trade war. Subaru's solution? Weld 2 rear-facing jump seats into the truck bed and register the Brat as a passenger vehicle instead of a light truck. That dropped the tariff to just 2.5%. It was clever, absurd, and uniquely Subaru. The 1980 Brat had a body style somewhere between a coupe, a hatchback, and a truck. It looked like a Subaru Leon that had its rear roof hacked off and a bed bolted on. The tiny bed was barely useful, and the jump seats, with plastic hand grips, were more a lawsuit waiting to happen than a true feature. But they worked, legally. The Brat rode on small wheels, had flared fenders, a bold grille, and a functional roof rack. The tailgate was stamped with big, proud Subaru lettering, as if to let everyone know, yeah, this is real. Inside, the Brat was Spartan even by early 1980s standards. Hard plastics, a basic dash layout, vinyl seats, and a standard AM radio greeted the driver. But it had 4WD, a big deal at the time, activated by a lever next to the gear shifter. This made it surprisingly capable in snow or on dirt trails, appealing to outdoorsy buyers on a budget. Under the hood was a 1.6-liter flat-4 engine, making around 67 horsepower. That's barely more than a lawn tractor today, but the Brat was light, agile, and had a certain unrefined charm. It wasn't fast, it wasn't powerful, but it could scramble through mud, snow, and back roads without breaking a sweat. Later models gained a 1.8-liter engine and even optional turbocharging, though by 1980 the Brat was still in its earlier modest form. The Brat found a cult following. It was cheap, capable, and just rebellious enough to be cool. Even Ronald Reagan owned a Brat on his California ranch. He reportedly liked how it could handle his hilly property without fuss. The rear jump seats became infamous. Though wildly unsafe, with no protection in a crash, they became iconic, symbols of the Brat's legal trickery and playful irreverence. The Brat lived on until 1987 in North America, and longer overseas. It never sold in massive numbers, but its unique character and clever design earned it classic status among Subaru fans and quirky car collectors. Its spiritual subsequent wouldn't arrive until decades later, with models like the Subaru Baja or even the Hyundai Santa Cruz, compact lifestyle pickups that value personality over payload. The 1980 Subaru Brat wasn't the fastest, strongest, or most refined vehicle of its time, but it was one of the most memorable. In a decade of corporate blandness and emissions-choked malaise, the Brat stood out. Half car, half truck, all attitude. It's proof that sometimes weird wins. Number 8. The 1957 Trabant P50 was more than just a car. It was a symbol of life behind the Iron Curtain. Manufactured by VEB Sachsenring Automobiles Zwickau in East Germany, the Trabant P50 was the first of its kind to carry the now infamous Trabant name. While it was never meant to be luxurious or fast, its crude engineering and questionable materials made it one of the most mocked vehicles in automotive history. Still, in the context of its time and place, the P50 offered something rare, the dream of private car ownership under socialism. One of the most notorious features of the Trabant P50 was its body, not made of metal, but of duroplast, a plastic-like material reinforced with cotton fibers or waste cloth. Though not literally cardboard, it looked and felt like it. The East German regime touted this as innovation, citing durability and corrosion resistance. In reality, duroplast was chosen because East Germany lacked the resources to mass-produce steel-bodied vehicles. Despite this, the P50 had a rather charming, rounded shape that mirrored Western compacts like the Fiat 600. But what lay beneath was an ultra-basic, riveted steel frame covered in these plastic panels, which often faded, cracked, or shattered with age. Safety was an afterthought, if it was thought of at all. Under the hood was a 500cc, air-cooled, two-cylinder, two-stroke engine that coughed out a paltry 18 horsepower. It was noisy, smoky, and utterly primitive, requiring drivers to pre-mix gasoline and oil at every fill-up, like a chainsaw or a lawnmower. This power plant pushed the P50 to a top speed of around 60 miles per hour, eventually. Acceleration was measured in geological time, and emissions? Let's just say the P50 made a blue fog trail wherever it went. But for East German citizens, having any car at all, even one that sputtered and smoked, was a privilege. Inside, the Trabant P50 was as basic as it gets. A thin steering wheel, minimal gauges, a pull-cord starter, and rudimentary seats were the extent of its offerings. Ventilation was poor, heater performance was inconsistent, and creature comforts were non-existent. Still, this stripped-down interior was easy to repair, because you'd be doing that a lot. The P50 was never meant to compete with Western cars. Instead, it was a product of socialist minimalism, just enough to get you from point A to B. But even that was a stretch. Its suspension was crude, the drum brakes were barely adequate, and build quality was often poor. Owners needed patience, mechanical skill, and usually a lot of duct tape. Despite everything, the Trabant P50 is now a cult icon. It's often seen as the symbol of communist inefficiency, but also of resilience. With limited options and immense demand, East Germans often waited more than a decade to receive one. And once they had it, they made it last, sometimes for generations. After the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, thousands of Trabants poured into West Germany, where they were laughed at, mocked, and quickly scrapped. Yet today, surviving examples are cherished as oddball classics. The 1957 Trabant P50 may have been slow, smoky, and cheaply built, but it played a major role in the everyday lives of millions behind the Iron Curtain. What it lacked in engineering, it made up for in historical significance. It was both a punchline and a symbol of ingenuity under constraint, of the absurdity of planned economies, and of the human will to keep moving forward, even if it meant driving a plastic car with a lawnmower engine. In the end, the P50 was not just a bad car, it was a historic one.
Number 7. The 1961 Amphar. It wasn't just a car, it wasn't just a boat, it was both, technically. Billed as the sports car that swims, the Amphar was the German-built answer to a question nobody was really asking. What if your car could also float? Born from post-war ingenuity, the Amphar was a novelty, a niche experiment that combined the hopes of aquatic adventure with the reality of leaky doors and underwhelming power. Despite its charming looks and one-of-a-kind amphibious design, the Amphar was plagued with impracticality. Today, it's both ridiculed and revered, depending on whether you owned one or tried to fix it. The Amphar Model 770 debuted in 1961 and was produced through 1968. It was designed by Hans Trippel, a German engineer who also had a hand in amphibious military vehicles during World War II. The 770 in its name stood for its theoretical top speeds, 7 knots in the water and 70 miles per hour on land, though neither figure was easily achieved. The car was built with steel panels over a watertight steel chassis. The hull was boat-like underneath, with rubber gaskets sealing the doors, which frequently failed. Propulsion on land came from the rear wheels, while twin nylon propellers powered it in water. To switch from car to boat mode, the driver had to engage a separate gear lever for the props, then steer using the front wheels, which doubled as rudders. Under the rear hood was a 1,147cc four-cylinder engine, borrowed from the British Triumph Herald. It produced a modest 43 horsepower, barely enough to move the 2,300-pound vehicle, let alone power it through waves. On land, the Amphar car was sluggish. Its high center of gravity and rear engine layout made handling vague and unconfident. Acceleration was uninspiring, and top speeds hovered well below the promised 70 miles per hour. In water, it was even worse, sluggish to enter and difficult to steer. Worse yet, the front tires would often generate wake that splashed over the windshield. Waterproofing was also an issue. Owners were often advised to carry a bilge pump or even a paddle, just in case they took on more water than expected. Rust was a constant enemy. The body had no sacrificial anodes or marine-grade protection, which meant corrosion occurred rapidly in saltwater environments. The Amphar car was marketed as an everyday car that could double as a boat. In reality, it was too compromised to excel at either. Only around 3,800 units were built, with the majority exported to the US, where it was more a conversation piece than a practical vehicle. President Lyndon Johnson famously owned one and enjoyed terrorizing unsuspecting guests by pretending the brakes had failed while driving straight into a lake on his Texas ranch. Despite the fun gimmick, reviewers and owners quickly realized that the Amphar car required constant maintenance, lacked serious performance, and was neither a competent car nor boat. The novelty wore thin. While the Amphar car was a commercial failure, it achieved cult status in later decades. Amphar car owners formed tight-knit communities, often gathering for splash-ins, where they drive into lakes together. Today, a well-restored Amphar car can fetch surprising sums at classic car auctions thanks to its rarity and novelty factor. The Amphar car also laid the conceptual groundwork for later amphibious vehicles, including military units and modern high-tech personal vehicles like the Gibbs Aquata. The 1961 Amphar car remains one of the most ambitious and misguided attempts to combine land and sea travel in a single consumer vehicle. While it flopped in practicality and performance, its sense of fun and eccentric charm keep it afloat in automotive lore. It didn't change the world, but it sure made a splash. Number 6. In the world of automotive oddities, few vehicles are as instantly recognizable or ridiculed as the Reliant Robin. Born in post-war Britain's age of austerity and peak fuel consciousness, the Robin was an attempt to bridge the gap between motorcycles and cars. What it ended up becoming was something far more unique, a symbol of compromise, eccentricity, and tragically poor handling. During the early 1970s, the UK faced economic challenges, rising fuel prices, and the demand for ultra-affordable vehicles. Reliant Motors, a company known for their earlier three-wheeled cars like the Regal, saw a gap in the market. In 1973, they introduced the Reliant Robin, a lightweight three-wheeled microcar aimed at motorcycle license holders and budget-conscious buyers. From a distance, the 1973 Robin resembled a scaled-down family hatchback. It featured a compact fiberglass body to keep weight down, it came in under 450 kilograms, and, crucially, it had 3 wheels, 2 in the rear, 1 in the front. This design allowed it to be classified as a motorcycle in Britain, making it cheaper to tax and accessible to those without a full car license. The Robin had a small 748cc inline-4 engine, later upgraded to 848cc, mounted in the front, sending power to the rear wheels. The interior was Spartan but serviceable. Basic seats, simple gauges, and not much else. It was designed with economy in mind, not luxury. The Robin could reach speeds of up to 85 miles per hour and return fuel economy in the 60-plus mpg range. Quite impressive for the time. But that's where the praise ends. The biggest issue? Stability. The single front wheel was responsible for both steering and bearing the weight of the engine, leading to catastrophic understeer. Take a corner too fast, and too fast could mean 20 miles an hour, and the Robin had a charming habit of tipping over. This flaw became so well known that the Robin earned a reputation for flipping over in comedy sketches, most notably in Top Gear, where Jeremy Clarkson famously rolled it multiple times. Public reception and cultural impact. Despite its flaws, the Reliant Robin found a niche following. It was cheap, easy to maintain, and perfect for short trips in rural Britain. By the mid-70s, it had sold reasonably well, even becoming an iconic fixture in small towns. Culturally, however, the Robin became a figure of fun. Its appearance in comedy shows, British sitcoms like Only Fools and Horses, which famously used the earlier Reliant Regal, and automotive parody videos cemented its place as the automotive equivalent of a banana peel, always ready for a laugh and a fall. Though production ended in the early 2000s, the Reliant Robin lives on as a pop culture relic. It's featured in museums, enthusiast clubs, and continues to be parodied online. Enthusiasts even race them or convert them into strange, high-powered monsters for track day laughs. Despite its laughable dynamics, the Robin did succeed in some areas. Fuel economy, affordability, British quirkiness preserved in fiberglass. It may not have been a triumph of engineering, but it was a triumph of personality, and few cars can claim that. The 1973 Reliant Robin remains one of the most iconic bad cars of all time. It was a product of necessity, built with good intentions and tragic execution. And yet, for all its flaws, it brought mobility to thousands and joy to millions who watched it topple over time and time again.
Number 5. In the pantheon of American automotive history, some cars are born to dominate highways, some to push performance limits, and others, like the 1960 King Midget Model 3, seem to defy logic altogether. This microcar, more akin to a golf cart than a full-sized vehicle, carved a niche of its own in a post-war America where economy was king for some. Built by Midget Motors Corporation, the King Midget wasn't just small, it redefined how little car you could get for your money. The King Midget started life in 1946 as a do-it-yourself kit aimed at the American tinkerer who wanted a car without the cost of Detroit steel. By 1951, the Model 2 evolved into a factory-built vehicle. The Model 3, introduced in 1957 and continuing through 1969, marked the company's most ambitious effort. In 1960, it was still among the most affordable and minimalistic cars on the road. Target audience: budget-conscious Americans who wanted just enough car. Assembly: Athens, Ohio. Part 2. Design: minimalism meets quirk. From any angle, the 1960 King Midget Model 3 looked like a toy. It featured a bare-bones boxy body with a canvas top, if any, 2 seats tightly squeezed in, stamped steel panels designed to keep costs and weight low, weight around 500 pounds, wheelbase 72 inches, length under 10 feet. Most hilariously, it often had no doors. You simply stepped in over the side like a go-kart.
The 1960 Model 3 used a single-cylinder Wisconsin air-cooled engine, typically a 9-horsepower model, though some buyers opted for as much as 12 HP. The drivetrain was chain-driven, a setup more familiar to motorcycles than automobiles. Top speed, around 40 to 50 miles per hour, downhill with a tailwind. Acceleration, slow enough to time with a sundial. Fuel economy, excellent, but who cares when the car can't outrun a jogger? Its performance, or lack thereof, was endearing to some, laughable to others, and terrifying on modern roads. The Model 3's standard features included a steering wheel, a gas pedal, a brake pedal, maybe a speedometer. No heater, no radio, no power anything. You got 4 wheels, well, usually, and the proud feeling of driving the smallest car on your block. Despite its laughably modest specs, the King Midget became something of a cult classic. Some see it as a symbol of American ingenuity, a people's car for those with very little money. Others see it as a hilarious footnote to automotive history. Surviving models are collector curiosities today. Owners' clubs celebrate the absurdity and charm. The King Midget proved that cheap transportation didn't need to be practical or even particularly roadworthy to find an audience. The 1960 King Midget Model 3 is remembered not for power, prestige, or innovation, but for daring to exist. In an era of tail fins, V8s, and chrome excess, it was an anti-car, small, slow, and stupidly simple. And for that, it deserves a nod. Not for being a great car, but for being a great story.
Number 4. In the late 1980s, Chrysler, under the leadership of Lee Iacocca, attempted one of the most unusual brand collaborations in American automotive history. The idea was to combine American practicality with European elegance. The result? The Chrysler TC by Maserati, a luxury 2-seater convertible that ended up being one of the most baffling cars of its time. The story began with Iacocca's personal relationship with Alejandro de Tomaso, who owned Maserati. Eager to inject some exotic flair into the Chrysler brand, Iacocca spearheaded a joint project with Maserati that would create a halo car, something upscale, stylish, and European-tinged to compete with the Mercedes SL and Cadillac Alante. The concept was ambitious. Chrysler would supply the drivetrain and Maserati would design and build the body in Italy. But in reality, this car would end up being a Chrysler LeBaron in a silk robe. The TC's body was bespoke in theory, but bore a striking resemblance to the LeBaron convertible. Too much resemblance, in fact. With its boxy profile, upright grille, and squared-off lines, most casual observers couldn't tell the difference. It had a unique, removable hardtop with opera windows and hand-fitted Italian leather inside, but that wasn't enough to set it apart visually. The worst part? The LeBaron cost nearly half as much and looked nearly identical, a branding disaster. Initially, the TC featured a Maserati-assembled 2.2-liter turbocharged SOHC engine with a Maserati-designed 16-valve cylinder head. It was mated to a Getrag 5-speed manual. While this drivetrain was rare and somewhat interesting, it wasn't particularly reliable or powerful. The 200-horsepower Lotus Esprit this was not. Later models were equipped with standard Chrysler engines, like the 3.0-liter Mitsubishi V6 and TorqueFlite automatic, which erased any remaining illusions of exotic pedigree. At over $33,000 in 1989, nearly $80,000 adjusted for inflation, the TC didn't offer performance or prestige to justify its price. It was slower than European competitors, and its front-wheel drive layout was out of place in a supposed luxury Grand Tourer. And because it was sold through Chrysler dealerships, customers looking for a Maserati didn't take it seriously, while Chrysler buyers found it too expensive. The TC had no audience.
The Chrysler TC by Maserati only lasted from 1989 to 1991, with just 7,300 units sold, far below expectations. It has become a textbook example of how brand mismatches and executive ego can sink a product. Today, the TC is remembered more for its behind-the-scenes drama than for anything it offered on the road. It stands as a monument to what happens when styling, engineering, and branding pull in three different directions. The 1989 Chrysler TC by Maserati tried to be Italian luxury with American practicality, but ended up being neither. It's a cautionary tale, one wrapped in leather and topped with a porthole hardtop. It may be forgotten today, but it's one of the most fascinating footnotes in Chrysler's history. A story of ambition, miscalculation, and corporate hubris on four wheels.
Number 3. When the Triumph TR7 launched in 1975, British Leyland declared it the shape of things to come. At first glance, this wedge-shaped sports car appeared futuristic and radical, an angular departure from the curvy British roadsters of the past. It was meant to redefine Triumph's legacy and stake a claim in the modern sports car segment. Instead, it became a symbol of mismanagement, design compromises, and one of the most disastrous executions in British automotive history. Design: the wedge that divided opinions. Styled by Harris Mann, the TR7 broke convention with its sharp lines, sloping nose, and distinctive wedge profile. It was Triumph's attempt to leap into the next era, leaving behind the traditional aesthetics of the TR6. Some called it bold and modern. Others thought it looked like a doorstop with headlights. The interior wasn't much better. While it offered decent comfort for the time and tried to appear sporty, materials were cheap, fit and finish were poor, and ergonomics were clumsy. The car looked like it belonged in a sci-fi movie, but inside it felt like a rushed prototype. Engineering and performance, all style, no substance. The TR7 was equipped with a 2-liter inline-4 engine making around 105 horsepower. Mated to a 4-speed manual, later a 5-speed and automatic became available, it wasn't exactly a rocket. Acceleration was tepid for a sports car, and the engine strained more than it sang. Worse, the TR7 initially had a live rear axle instead of independent rear suspension, giving it a choppy, unstable ride and uninspiring handling. Many enthusiasts were puzzled. How could a successor to the TR6 regress in driving dynamics? British Leyland's internal chaos and cost-cutting only deepened the car's woes. Quality control was abysmal. TR7s left the factory with wiring faults, leaky gaskets, misaligned panels, and unpredictable electrical systems. Dealers dreaded seeing them roll back in. Production nightmares, a victim of its maker. British Leyland's labor unrest and plant mismanagement crippled the TR7. Built initially at the Speak factory in Liverpool, notorious for strikes and sabotage, many TR7s were poorly assembled. Some even joke that workers intentionally left spanners inside the doors or hand-tightened bolts. Later production moved to Canley and finally to Solihull, but the damage to the car's reputation was already done. No amount of retooling or improvement could reverse public opinion after such a rocky start. Variants: TR8 and missed potential. There was one bright spot, the TR8. Fitted with a Rover 3.5-liter V8, the TR8 had the power and performance the TR7 never did. It handled better, sounded stronger, and was genuinely quick. But it came too late and in too small numbers to redeem the TR7 line. Legacy: a futuristic flop. The TR7 was discontinued in 1981, having sold over 100,000 units. Not bad in numbers, but catastrophic in perception. It's remembered more as a cautionary tale than a classic. The shape of things to come turned out to be the shape of decline. Today, the TR7 has a small cult following and is appreciated for its quirky styling and rarity. But even its fans admit it was more promise than product. Conclusion:
a symbol of British Leyland's collapse. The Triumph TR7 is a textbook example of what happens when innovation is undermined by poor execution, design, or reliability. What could have been a landmark became a punchline. So yes, the TR7 was the shape of things to come, not in the way Triumph hoped, but as a warning of what happens when a company loses its way.
Number 2. The 1982 Renault Fuego. French for fire, the Fuego was marketed with flair. Flair it often failed to back up with substance. It promised European style, sporty performance, and fuel efficiency, all in a futuristic, aerodynamic hatchback shell. But the execution? Let's just say it left many American buyers cold. 1. The concept, a bold move from Renault. In the early 1980s, Renault was working with American Motors Corporation, AMC, to gain traction in the U.S. market. The Fuego was intended as a sporty front-wheel drive coupe that would stand out against bland domestic offerings and underpowered Japanese imports. Designed by legendary French stylist Robert Opron, best known for Citroën's SM and CX, the Fuego had the looks to turn heads. Aerodynamically advanced for its time, the Fuego boasted a slippery 0.32 drag coefficient. With its wraparound rear glass, semi-fastback design, and low stance, it looked like a European cousin to the Porsche 924, at least from a distance. 2. What's under the hood? The Fuego was more about appearance than performance. In the US, it came with two basic engine choices: a 1.6-liter or 1.7-liter four-cylinder in the base models, a turbocharged 1.6-liter version added in 1983, pushing out a modest 95 horsepower. That turbo version was supposed to light the fire, but compared to American muscle or even Japanese performance cars of the era, it was barely a spark. Acceleration was sluggish, the ride was soft, the handling was vague. The Fuego looked fast, but rarely acted like it. 3. Features and innovations. To its credit, the Fuego did offer some surprising tech. An optional remote keyless entry system, one of the first, digital readouts on some European versions, comfortable seats, and good visibility. It also had front-wheel drive, which made it decently capable in winter weather, assuming it started. That was a big if. 4. Reliability, or lack thereof. The Fuego quickly earned a reputation for being unreliable. Common issues included electrical gremlins, poor build quality, turbocharger failure, fragile interiors, rapid rusting, especially in northern climates. Add in the fact that AMC's dealer network was already shrinking, and owners often found themselves with nowhere to turn for parts or service. 5. Market reception and disappearance. Despite heavy marketing and a competitive price, the Fuego struggled in the US. The name Fuego may have meant fire, but this car barely generated a flicker of consumer enthusiasm. Sales fell flat, and by 1985, Renault pulled the plug on the American version entirely. In Europe, it did slightly better, lasting until 1986. But even there, it never quite fulfilled its promise as a true sport coupe. 6. The legacy. Today, the Renault Fuego is a curiosity, a car remembered more for what it could have been than what it was. It represents that early 80s era when European manufacturers tried to crash the US market with quirky, stylish offerings that simply couldn't hold up under American driving conditions or expectations. Conclusion: a cautionary tale in a stylish suit. The 1982 Renault Fuego had the name, the looks, and the promise of innovation. But underneath that sleek shell was a mishmash of mediocrity and misfires. It's remembered now as an emblem of good intentions ruined by poor execution. A classic example of why looking fast isn't the same as being fast or reliable. So, the next time you see a Fuego, if you ever see one, tip your hat.
You're witnessing the smoldering ashes of a flame that never really caught fire.
Number 1. The 1987 Yugo GV. This compact hatchback was supposed to be an affordable, no-frills car for the masses. Instead, it became a punchline, a symbol of everything that can go wrong when you prioritize price over quality and reliability. 1. The origin, from Yugoslavia to America. The Yugo GV was imported to the United States by Zastava Automobiles, based in the former Yugoslavia. Launched in the US in the mid-1980s, it was pitched as the cheapest new car on the market, starting around $3,900. Its appeal was obvious, an ultra-affordable way to own a brand new car during a time when gas prices and insurance costs were on the rise. The idea was simple: basic transportation, no bells or whistles, just a boxy little hatchback to get you from A to B. 2. The design and features. The Yugo GV was based on the Fiat 127 platform, but heavily simplified. It was tiny, with minimal amenities. Small 1.1-liter inline-4 engine producing roughly 55 horsepower. Manual transmission only. Basic interior with little sound insulation. Limited safety features by modern standards. It was bare bones, even by 1980 standards, but that's how it kept costs down. 3. The problems start: quality and reliability. What really doomed the Yugo was its terrible build quality and constant mechanical failures. Frequent engine breakdowns and overheating. Poorly designed electrical systems causing malfunctions. Rust issues happening within months. Transmission and clutch problems. Weak suspension and brake components. Owners quickly found themselves at the mechanic more than on the road. The parts were often low quality, and the car's design didn't age well under normal wear. 4. The public reaction, from curiosity to mockery. At first, the Yugo's low price was tempting for buyers on a budget, but the reliability issues quickly became the subject of jokes. Comedians and car enthusiasts ridiculed the Yugo for its frequent breakdowns. It was dubbed the worst car ever made in many automotive circles. Magazine tests famously struggled to keep the Yugo running or achieve decent performance. It gained a reputation as a death trap with little safety or durability. The car became a cultural punchline, representing cheapness gone wrong. 5. Why did it fail? Several factors contributed to the Yugo's downfall. Poor engineering and design. The original Fiat platform was outdated by the time the Yugo was exported. Lack of quality control. Manufacturing in Yugoslavia couldn't meet Western standards consistently. Minimal investment. Zastava and importers focused on low price, neglecting customer support and dealer networks. Competition. Japanese and domestic cars offered better reliability at slightly higher prices. 6. The end of the line. By the early 1990s, the Yugo had lost most of its market share. Production continued in Eastern Europe until 2008, but in America, the brand disappeared after a few short years. The lingering memories of the Yugo's failures made it nearly impossible for the company to recover. 7. The legacy, a cautionary tale. The Yugo GV remains a symbol of what happens when cost-cutting destroys quality. It serves as a cautionary example to automakers. Cheap doesn't have to mean terrible, but ignoring build quality and reliability will kill a car's reputation fast. Interestingly, some enthusiasts today collect Yugos as oddball relics of the 1980s, appreciating them for their sheer absurdity and role in automotive history. Conclusion: the Yugo. Affordable, but at what cost? The 1987 Yugo GV was an ambitious attempt to bring affordable transportation to a wider audience, but the execution was a disaster. It broke down constantly, lacked comfort, and quickly became the laughingstock of the car world. Its story is a reminder that, in the auto industry, balance matters. Price, quality, and reliability must all come together to make a lasting vehicle.